want to start with you first. This book has such a special place in your heart. As you brought Marie to life, what's one thing that you wanted to make sure was translated from page to screen, and what's something new that you brought to her?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I there obviously because you can't fit 500, 600 pages into any length of film. Really, is I wanted to bring the narrative inside her head to life as best I could through my actions, but there's this sort of taxonomic quality to her, this sort of studious nature that I wanted to make sure was conveyed, even though it really never comes up in the script. Because there's this relationship between her and Hugh Laurie's character, Etienne, that really exists in the pages of a book. So they connect through The Voyage of the Beagle and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And he spends so much time reading to her and she to him, and they can overcome their own challenges and find a little bit of peace in the sound of their own voices telling these stories. And I wanted to bring that texture and nuance to her character. It was really a challenge for me because I'm a first timer. It was my first audition and my first part. So I spent a lot of time with the book. I had, like you said, I was very special to me previously, and so I really deep dived into it as best I could. I pulled out passages and coordinated them with lines from the script. Anything that I thought that I could bring to moments of silence that was in the book, I tried to, and I had like spreadsheets. I wrote fan fiction and diary entries from her. I had playlists, which I know Lewis also does a playlist, but in a very different way in his prep. And so I'm like, I coordinated scents and sounds with the playlist and textures of fabric when I finally get to be fitted for my wardrobe, and like all of these components to try to bring this person to life. And I'm really grateful that there was such rich source material to pull from, because it helped me feel like, what is a reader taking from this character? What sits deepest with the reader, and how can I bring that to life? And it was just a really extraordinary way to bind together every sense and a physicality and an emotionality to such an extraordinary person.
You're incredible in this limited series. And Lewis, your character is grappling with a lot of guilt and grief for the things that he's had to do to survive, which you brought so much nuance to. As an actor, how did you create the space for yourself to dive into that arc?
I also read the book, not before I hadn't read the book before I got the part, I must admit, but I did read the book after I got the part, and it's obviously really helpful because you can't go into that much detail when writing a script, and then you just have this whole the richness of this world on those pages in the book. So I did the same thing, just sort of collect as much as possible about the character to create this world. And then also with music, it's quite it helps me so much to tap into the character. I don't know why, but it just this is actually I did another film and I didn't really understand what the vibe of the film was going to be like exactly. And then the director showed me a few music pieces, and it sort of just clicked with me. I was like, okay, that is, now I fully understand the vibe of the film. So it really helps me tapping into the character, just sort of adding music pieces to it. But I think it's the sort of the guilt, also the sadness about the guilt, and this constant fight for him, that this moral compass that he has, and then the morally wrong decisions that he takes, but also wanting to keep his soul clean. And it's all those things that I think create a sort of very wonderful three-dimensional character. And I don't know, I guess I'm a little attached to traumatized, saddened, guilt-feeling characters, but I'm just really grateful for having gotten that opportunity, because I mean they are also challenging, but they're also quite fun to play as well.
You brought so
Yeah.
much nuance to it. And Arya, it was really important to Sean that you were a creative partner and equal throughout this experience. What were some of those early conversations that you had with him about what you hope to accomplish as an artist, as you brought this beloved character and her lived environment to the screen?
I was just so grateful and honored that he respected me enough to do that, because I know that can't always happen. I've since learned that that's not always the case, even if you're remarkably experienced, that you don't always have that connection with the director. And I was just really, really grateful that he allowed me to take a lot of time to express myself and my feelings for the story to him. What I wanted to achieve emotionally, but also what we wanted to convey in terms of her blindness, because that's the first time it's being authentically represented on screen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are existing in this headspace of stigmas for what a blind character would look like and how they would behave. And they think that blindness is something that's visible, and it is not. I'm not sure where that misconception really came from, but 100 years of film have ingrained that in our society and in our culture. So they would believe that, you know, a blind character would maybe look off into the distance. They never look at who they were speaking to. Their expression would be vacant, and maybe they'd be a little bit vapid. And they'd shuffle their feet and their palms would be out. And all of these things are not true. And unless you have a facial difference, your blindness would not be observable through the expressiveness of your face or the way you connected or made quote unquote eye contact with other people. So I that was something that I don't want to speak for Sean, but I don't think that Sean totally knew. I knew that he knew that doing this authentically was going to make a huge difference, but I don't think he knew in that way. So a lot of the conversation became about how can we use her hands and her feet and other physical mannerisms in her body to demonstrate how she's navigating the world with enhanced senses in the absence of another sense. And for me, you know, I wanted to make sure that this was done with a certain mindfulness for the condition in which she's living. So there's a historical component to this. There's, you know, of course, the Nazis persecuted people with disabilities very violently, and that's not a part of the story, but it would be part of the bearing of the character. And so we had these conversations right up until the final day of filming, basically how this would be demonstrated, with the knowledge that an audience might find it really jarring to see blindness presented as something that is unrecognizable until you bring in a circumstance that makes it so. And Sean was an incredible person to work with. I'm so proud of him for doing this work so beautifully and with such honesty. And I am grateful that he took the time to listen and allowed me to be the voice of a group of people who has not even been underrepresented, but been completely unrepresented in the past.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to him.
Great answer. Louis, I've got one final question for you. Arya arrived to set 3 weeks before she started filming, and it gave you the opportunity to show her everything that you love about the craft and this industry, having grown up in it. Who were the mentors in your own life who've done that for you? And did you gain a deeper appreciation for your own craft, having been able to do that for somebody else?
So I always, when I was younger, when I grew up being in films, I always search for someone to look up to be my mentor. I had one German actor called Benno Furman, who I did my first big film Tom Sawyer with, and then another film a year later, and he was kind of mentoring me, which I was really, really grateful for. So I knew that I wanted to be there for Arya when she came in, and Arya, yeah, as you said, came in 3-4 weeks early, and sort of shadowed 15th, Sean. Yeah, and the thing is, it brought me a lot of joy as well, because Arya, just because you picked up on everything so quickly.
I really tried to soak everything
so
you said.
Eager to learn, and sort of just sucked it all in, which was amazing to see, and how quickly you sort of understood how everything worked. I mean, it took me a few years to get a sort of sense for it, and just you sort of understood all of it in a few weeks.
But I was kind of thrown in.
Yeah, you were. I mean, you had to. There was no other way, really. But I think that is also something that really connected us and helped sort of make the connection transcend the screen even before they meet, which was obviously very, very important to us and to tell the story of the both of them.